Ooh, there's my face. That thing's about to age 5 years in 7 days. So the other day, Logitech got in contact with me and said, would you be interested in taking part in a little private game jam? It would be just you and 2 other YouTube game developers. You'd have 7 days to make the game and 3 or 4 days to make the video. And we'd give you money and free stuff. And I said... A game jam, by the way, is when somebody gives you a theme and you only have a short amount of time to create a whole video game from scratch using that theme. You work non-stop, sacrificing your free time, sleep, your social life, your health, your sanity. It's the freaking best! I think I've competed in about 20 different game jams now, and the incentive for doing those was only ever to have fun, which is... So having an opportunity to make a game jam my living, at least for a little while, is pretty great. So today I'm going to start on this game, and they've just told me the theme, which is the same theme that the 2 other devs have. The core concept of the game will be a developer who is sucked into their own code. Take the idea and develop it in your own direction and style. So of those 20 game jams that I mentioned, which I usually do with my brother, who is a programmer, of those 20, I think we've probably only finished like half. We always start by saying, okay, let's learn from our mistakes and actually come up with a simple idea this time. And then we come up with a complicated idea and convince ourselves that it's simple. Yeah, if only realizing that actually helped. All I can think about doing is coming up with a game where you edit the code of the game from inside the game.
Oh, déjà vu.
I don't even know how I would do that or even make it fun, yet I'm trying to convince myself that I can do both. Not to mention that I'm on my own this time, so this idea is unfortunately occupying all the space in my brain which I require in order to come up with another simpler idea. I need a break.
Right, mate, I've got a package here for... All right then.
Ah, yes. So Logitech sent me this to use while I'm making the game, their new MX mechanical keyboard. They asked me if I wanted the mini or the regular size. I went for the full size because I've got big clumsy hands and I've actually been using this tiny Bluetooth keyboard. I swear this thing gets smaller every time I use it. So it's actually pretty handy that that's what they chose to send me. It's apparently made from 45% recycled materials. It's their quietest mechanical keyboard ever, but you can optionally choose from 3 different styles of switch. So you can choose exactly how you want it to feel and sound. It's nice and comfortable and tactile. Yeah, it's nice to click-clack on. Oh look, it's even got a make game button, which I wanted in my last video. The backlighting looks really nice and seems to sense your hands coming over the keyboard and turns the light on and off. I like the fact that it's illuminated in white. That may seem like a trivial point, but tell that to my laptop manufacturer. The only settings I have on there are off and Epic Gamer Rave. They also sent me an MS Master 3S mouse, which features quiet clicking. Seriously, this thing is almost silent. It's got an electromagnetic scroll wheel for ultra-fast scrolling, which, to be honest, I didn't think it was going to be useful at all, but it's probably the best feature on the mouse. There's a pressure plate by the thumb, which you can code different gestures to. And you can set your buttons and gestures to do specific things in each individual piece of software. The Logitech Options Plus control panel is so comprehensive and useful, it's unbelievable. The mouse has a resolution of 8000 dpi, which is incredibly precise. And again, the materials are partially sustainable. So yeah, cool stuff. Thank you to Logitech for funding me making a game. So let's make a game. I ended up with an idea that's sort of derived from the coding idea, and I'm actually, I think, more excited about this one, and it seems manageable. So basically my vision is, as you're inside your own game, you can sort of see code floating in the air that tells the player the logic of the level. So each level would be its own little cryptic escape room and would have different conditions for completion. So you've got to look at this cryptic bit of code that's floating in the air and sort of intuit from it how to complete the level. That might sound like it's potentially over the heads of some people who don't really know anything about coding, but actually code often reads pretty much like a sentence. Like here's a bit of code: if player.speed equals 0, door.open. Like, I don't see how anyone is not going to know what that does, coding experience or not. And I don't even have to write like real code. I can just write it in the style of code. If I'm careful, I can write the code in such a way that I think anybody can read it. It'll basically be the same concept as Gandalf turning up at the entrance of Moria and trying to decipher an elvish riddle to open a door. Lots of challenges like that. So I thought I'd start out by designing the main character, not because I thought it was the most important thing, but because I wanted to give you guys guys something to look at early on in the video, and I went through a couple of iterations of basic body shapes, but the character movement and the animation that I had in mind was, without realizing it, pretty much identical to Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, and I think subconsciously I may have been influenced by that game, but that's okay, that game's great. But they're about to get a whole lot different. As you can see, my guy is way cuter than Toad. So once that was done, I quickly whipped together a character controller. I'm not using any third-party character controllers this time, because it's not really a platformer, this game, in the sense my other projects have been. I felt it would be best to have a really simple character controller. So then I used Auto Rig Pro in Blender to rig the guy, and gave him a little walk animation and an idle animation. By the way, so many people commented in the last video, why are you using an old version of Blender? And that was because I was using a script that didn't work in the latest version of Blender. So yes, I'm aware that Blender has released updates to their software in the last 4 years. So then I stuck him in Unity, hooked up and scripted the animation, and look at him. That is pretty good work for a day, I think. He's looking very grey. I don't think he's seen the sun in a while, but I actually don't want to add any colour. I really like the fact that he's black and white. He's sucked dry of all vitality, just like a game developer should be. Alright, time to get some sleep. One of the most important parts about game jams is getting enough sleep. You might think just getting like 5 hours a night or something will give you more time, but you'll end up just working slower in that time. So yeah, good night. So the first thing I did today was to add some quality of life changes for the player. I decided this week for each feature that I add, I want to get it to like a really good place before I move on to the next feature, so that I don't end up with a bunch of half-finished things at the end that I need to fix. So I got the camera working exactly how I wanted, zooming in and out, added gamepad controls for people who want them, and added in a silhouette shader so that the character appears behind other objects so that you never lose track of him. Then I did other things like toy with the collisions and adding full speed, and then I added a kill plane so that he respawns, and I downloaded a font from DaFont for all the code, and I had to edit this font heavily because I liked how each character had a version of itself which was highlighted, just like you get in a really basic console or something like that. But not every character had this, like none of the punctuation had it, and all the numbers only had highlighted versions. So after that, I downloaded this prototype material, which is quite popular among game devs. I think a lot of people use it, so I figured it'd be quite relevant to use it as the look of the game, since it's a game about somebody making a game. I then whipped up a little moving platform script which parents the player to the platform, and I didn't actually ever realize that it was that simple to create a moving platform. I always assumed that there would be like maths involved in working out how they would move together, but nope. So then I wanted to add a way for the player to complete the level. And I was thinking, what does the level finish, what does the end portal look like in an unfinished game? And I mean, it's a game, so it can be anything really, depending on what the game is. But this is sort of like a blank shell of a game. That's the theme, it's still being developed when you get sucked into it. So I thought better than having a generic, gamey looking portal, came up with the idea that you could literally walk into a shortcut folder in order to get to another place on the computer, or rather another file in the game. So I modeled and rigged that up, a little idle animation and an open and close, and then I added the fifth dimension to the game. I was determined that all that time I spent in the last video toying with shaders wasn't going to be wasted, and I'm so glad I learned how to do that because I think this already gives the game a lot of personality. A lot of people commented like, what are you doing? You shouldn't be wasting your time playing with shaders, you should stick to stuff that you're good at. But I think that's obviously the wrong approach. It's good to challenge yourself and invest that time, even if you fail, it still might come in handy. And then I made a little iris white shader in Shader Graph, which was surprisingly simple. I'm really loving Shader Graph at the moment. You can do so much so quickly, and there's so many specialized nodes that it doesn't really take any code or intimate shader knowledge in order to do some cool things. And that's the end of day 2. I didn't get as much done as day 1 because I ran into quite a few coding issues. And by coding issues, I mean the program that I used to code in just lost its connection with Unity, so I couldn't debug any code and I couldn't see errors or anything. So I spent half a day figuring that out, and then it just miraculously fixed itself, which I'm glad it did, but I'd rather have just figured out what was wrong. Oh well. Night night. Okay, so day 3. I've only ever done a maximum of 3 days for a game jam before, and by day 3 I usually start to feel quite a lot of fatigue, and today is no different. I am exhausted, but still full of drive, so let's get going. I had the idea to make the menu of the game, the pause menu, a code editor. So it's actually tied in its theme and its design to the game itself and the situation you're in. Kind of like the folder portal. It's not something that's just sort of separate or affixed to the game. I really wanted to try and tie everything together. So yeah, I spent the whole day designing this. You can resize it and you can click all the buttons on it, and the menu options are all written as though they were functions or different bits of code. You can even scroll through the text sideways, even though that has no purpose, but I thought that was a really fun feature to have. The settings menu comes up as a new file with more code in, and this isn't all just useless cosmetic stuff. The fact that it's now tied into the theme of the game gives me a bunch of ideas about how I can actually incorporate this in the puzzle solving and link things in the levels to this little editor. So I'm really glad I spent the day doing this, but it did take the whole day. So just like that, that's day 3 over. Now, it's day 4, and I know what you might be thinking. Day 4, and there's no game. There's no gameplay even started. And that's because usually I'll underestimate the complexity of all the things I have planned. And I'll think I have plenty of time to do all this. And I'll actually work slower because of that, thinking I have all the time in the world to fiddle around endlessly. And I'll get to the end and I'll have no time at all to implement all this polish. And it's always really unsatisfying. And what doing it first means is that if I do the gameplay after, I won't have the luxury of taking my time. It's just an approach I was interested to try. So the last big thing I wanted to take a big bite out of was the main menu and a cutscene for the beginning of the game. So I stuck the code editor on a monitor and then modeled a little swivelly chair for the guy to sit on while he's working at his computer, whipped up a little typing animation, and animated the cutscene of him being sucked into the computer. I think I'll wait to show you the result of that because it's probably something I'm going to iterate on a lot, and I don't really want to be showing the same thing over and over again. So next I started modeling a little ducky. There's a thing in programming where coders will talk to a rubber duck. They'll explain their problems to the rubber duck in order to trigger something in their own brain. So yes, they'll literally sit there and talk to a rubber duck. So I thought it'd be cool to add that into the sort of theming of the game. So the rubber duck's like my Goomba, or probably more like my Toad, even though I already said the main character's my Toad. Whatever, everybody's Toad. And with that done, I'm sort of happy with the cosmetics of the game, and tomorrow I think I'll be good to start pumping out levels. So that's day 4 over. Okay, I've been looking forward to this. I've been thinking up level ideas this entire time, so I have a big list and I'm just going to run through it and pump out some levels. Okay, end of the day, and that went really well. I came up with 8 levels in total today. There's surprisingly little that I can show without actually spoiling all the solutions, but I managed to get some cool stuff done, I think. So where I could, I tried to make the concept of the level and the puzzle to do with this guy creating bugs in his own game. So the bug is the thing that's actually stopping you from completing the level, and you have to figure out workarounds to get around the bug, or even use the bug to your advantage in order to complete the level. So yeah, I'm really happy with how it's going. I think I'm actually on track to finish this. So even though I did those levels quite quickly and I have a bunch more ideas, I'm actually not going to create that many more levels because I'm anticipating having to play test each level quite a lot, and I don't want to end up with a massive long list of levels that I've got to do quality control on at the end. It's better to focus on a small number of levels and really hone them, I think. My brother and I once did a point and click puzzle game for a game jam, and we'd planned to do 10 different puzzles, but we ended up only having time to put 3 in, and I remember we were worried that people were going to think the game was too short, but it turned out that 3 was enough for people. So I think 10 levels is pretty good. But yeah, that's day 5 done. Okay, I didn't sleep very well last night, but we persevere. We're so close to the end now with 2 days left that I can't afford to have a slack day because I would just kick myself after working this hard. So I'm gonna keep pushing myself even though I'm very, very tired. And let's start off with something simple. I'm just gonna give Ducky here some eyeballs, some real eyeballs, because I think his painted on eyes were looking a bit sad. After that, what I did was to think about another way to sort of extend the gameplay without adding more levels. And I thought about having, like Celeste has the strawberries, which are optional goals that you can aim for, but don't have to in order to complete the game. I thought my version of that could be bugs that you find within the code. So I started modeling up and animating a bug. It feels weird having add bugs to game as a to-do item on my Trello list, but also kind of cathartic, like I'm getting vengeance on Unity because it's always giving me bugs, so it's my turn this time. The bugs just use the moving platform script that I made earlier, and I gave that the ability to trigger commands when it reaches the waypoints so that it can switch between the different animations. And I added this gold shader to it. I went for a style that's not your typical buggy, glitchy effect, but I think it looks like it's sort of not quite tangible, like it doesn't really belong in this reality, you know, which is definitely the effect I was going for. And I added a ghost version of the shader, so when you come back to a level where you've already collected the bug before, it'll appear transparent. And there was actually another benefit to adding these bugs. A lot of the solutions for the levels that I designed were very cryptic, almost too cryptic to be considered fair by the player. But I really liked these cool cryptic solutions and I didn't want to get rid of them. But by adding the bugs, I was able to keep those solutions as the way of getting the bug and then tone down the difficulty of actually just completing the level and getting to the folder, although they're still fairly cryptic. And then once I'd done that and added all those to the levels and edited all 8 levels, I had some time to add 2 more levels to the game. Check it out, I didn't realize the debug symbol in Unity actually appears in gold. Subconsciously influenced once again. So then I created a little penultimate scene where you're climbing a staircase to the final scene of the game. And all the little duckies are here supporting you and cheering you on. And now that I've done that, there's only a couple more things to do. I want to add a dialogue system so that the player can say stuff at the beginning of the level. That would be like a good way to inject some comedy, and also I think some of the levels just require a bit of a hint. Nothing that's gonna spell it out for you, but subtle cues that I can include in the text. So yeah, here's that dialogue system working. I drew a little avatar of the guy. I wanted to do some frames, some different frames for different expressions, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna have time to do that. It's not the most important thing. And before I finish tonight, I also want to create the final level, the final folder, your reward for completing the game, which I'm not going to show you. You're going to have to complete the game or watch somebody else complete it. So let's just skip to the final day, day 7. So I feel slightly rejuvenated today. Rejuvenated is the wrong word. I think my body has built up a resistance to constant stress and torture. I feel sort of like I'm in shock, if that makes any sense. I've not really had a half an hour off in the last 7 days, so I think maybe I'm going slightly mad. But today's the final day, final push, and I'm really enthusiastic to get everything that I can done in this one day. So I improved the title screen, and here's the final title sequence that I was teasing earlier. And as you can tell, I've added a bunch of sounds to the game, to the menu and everything like that. And the game also has music now, which was made by my new friend Flowerhead. And I'll be working with him on other projects in the future. And in fact, he's already written more songs for other projects that I've been working on. and I'm really excited to show you those. I requested some very kind of Nintendo-y music, and he's absolutely nailed it. So look forward to that. And he's released the music that he made for this game, as well as a bunch of other songs, including a lot of music I used in this video. And it's all royalty-free, so you can go and check his YouTube channel out, and his SoundCloud if you want to go and download those. He's currently sitting on like 20 views per video, which is absolutely criminal, so go and check him out. And you may have noticed that I put some folders on the screen in the start scene with little bugs crawling on them. And these folders are actually shortcuts so that you can replay levels that you've already played. So you just double click them and it takes you to the corresponding level. And the bugs that are crawling on the screen only appear if you've collected the bug in the levels, so you know which levels you have left to do. And if you move the folder around the screen, the bug will follow it. And as well as that, I also added a secret ending if you collect all the bugs. I also came up with the title of the game. It was actually a work in progress title that I came up with early on, and genuinely always meant to come up with a better title. But in the end, I couldn't, and I sort of thought that that was perfect. Like, often work in progress games don't have names. So why would this game have a name? It can just be that temporary name that was never meant to be the name. So yeah, the game is called That Game Where You Are So Bad at Coding That You Break the Laws of Physics and Are Sucked Into the Game. Think of better title later. That's the full title. And just to be sure, I checked on itch.io whether they would allow such a long title, and they do. There doesn't seem to be any discernible limit to a title's length, so that's good. But actually, sitting here talking about it now, maybe I should have a bit more of a pithy title. So I might still have this as the title in the title screen, but I may shorten it to ThatGame.exe for presentation purposes. And even though the game jam's technically over now, I'm really enthusiastic to add more levels. In fact, I think that this game might be something I'd try and work quite seriously on. You can download and play the game on itch.io, and you can find a link below for that. And of course, don't forget to check out Saultoons and Zyger's games and devlogs on making them. Saultoons created an arcadey game about making spaghetti code called Spagbool, which is objectively the best name ever. And it has some absolutely lovely retro art and a leaderboard, which I know is going to be very competitive at the top. And as of me recording this, Zyger is making her entry, which is a horror game, so I'm really excited to see that. And of course, thank you so much to all my patrons for supporting me after the last video. I did not expect the amount of support that I actually ended up getting, with so many people pledging the highest tier. I decided to improve the perks and give every patron a name in the credits, and give all the top tiers a little personalized animation. But thank you again to everyone who pledged. I've been posting updates on the Patreon to projects I've been working on, including one that you'll hopefully see very soon, so head over there if you want to check that out. I've just realised there's one more thing I've got to do. You may have noticed how the main character was typing on nothing that whole time, and that was because I meant to model the MX keyboard that I've been using, and then stick that in the game, but I completely forgot. And yeah, thanks again to Logitech for running this jam with me and the two others. The keyboard's really nice, and I used it for the whole week without having to plug it in. Supposedly it lasts 10 months if you don't use the backlighting. Anyway, let's stick this thing in the game, and there we go. Okay, so now it's finally finished. Thanks again, guys. See you in the next one.